Welcome to Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media. Here's your host, Mark Merrill.
Hi everyone, welcome to Firm. Our special edition here, ladies and gentlemen, is about the Maine gubernatorial candidates. We feel here at Fairness in Reporting Media the voters choose back to basics. Stop all the confusion, the complex threats, trying to make things more difficult than they really are. You go in the voting booth, legally of course. You fill in the cards that are given to you after you go through the identification lines, as normal Maine and I believe a lot of American citizens do. You vote. The cards go into machines that are tabulated quickly and guarded by not only election officials that volunteer town to town, city to city, state by state. They are guarded by security officers. Any questions? There shouldn't be. But you see, folks, what we have a failure to understand as far as some of these other people are concerned. It's just a matter of getting the people there to vote, especially the ones who may not have transportation or are incapacitated to be able to vote, but still have the mindset to vote. I think that's a lot of things that the American people don't take for granted, but a lot of election officials do. And why do we say that? Because all Maine citizens as well as Americans have a fair and equal chance in 2026 coming up to choose the best qualified candidate for governor. Don't they? Don't we? We the people? There's many of them to consider as far as the candidates are concerned, folks, and to study their experience in public politics and government. They've done it for centuries. 2.5 so far. But we at Firm here, folks, as we get prepared for our brief interviews we've done with a couple of the candidates, we still believe in the working people to make the ultimate decision for putting Maine and country, if you don't mind, back on track to a civil society and culture. Enough with the threats. The one that yours truly has pretty much seen, or two that I've seen over the past 2 years since Janet, Queen of Denial, throwing her hate and violence every chance she gets through her cronies, doing her dirty work instead of working for the Maine people and our prosperity. Yeah, we're going to point out and pin them to the wall. See if we can slap some common sense. Truth, facts, reality, and common sense that we promote here at Fairness in Reporting Media. That's right, Firm. This organization, which we believe is being, or has been in the past, we don't know if they still are around or not in Maine, but I have a funny feeling they're around the country just trying to throw their hate and violence against the births of new children or adoptions. If a woman has a child forthcoming and can't afford to raise it, like me. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You're looking at an adopted child from birth. I turned out pretty well. Thank God for the parents that I got. And I mean that. And there is only one God. So it can happen, folks. Success, hard work, guidance, education, experiences. Do good for others before you do good for yourself. Stroke your ego. Hell no. You see somebody lying by the wayside, and they need help, you help them. That's just the way it is, or should be, in the United States of America. We have to get back to it. And also enjoy prosperity, folks, for all of us, with the freedom of choice, without pressure or threats, as mentioned, on how we live to pursue life, liberty, and maintain happiness as well. That's our view. We welcome yours. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, which we will put up on the screen before the end of this program. First of all, let's get to the candidates that we have interviewed recently, folks. This first gentleman is South China Independent candidate John Glowa, who you see before you here. A picture from his website, who announced his candidacy August 5th. It's a bit of a couple of lengthy segments, folks, but here's our interview we had recently with Mr. Glowa by phone.
In terms of revenue,
Okay.
my intent is to make our taxation system here in Maine progressive, or more progressive, by making those who can pay more in taxes to actually pay more in taxes. My goal is to eliminate tax loopholes or reduce them. And there are a lot of items that no taxes are being charged on, and so there are a lot of tax exemptions out there that should be looked at. So I think we can raise revenue by eliminating some of the loopholes, making those who should pay more taxes actually pay more taxes, and on the spending side, in my opinion, and certainly I think my evidence or my personal experience shows that there's a lot of waste in state government, and there's a lot of things that go on that frankly shouldn't be going on, and that's why I believe we need to have an independent, continuous auditing system within the executive branch to look at all of our programs to see if, in fact, the money is going where it should be going. So I think there's an awful lot that can be done to fix what's broken and to make our executive branch, frankly, work the way it should, be far more effective and efficient. And I think there's a tremendous amount of room for improvement, and I intend to get to the bottom of it and see that happens.
On a backup question to that real quick, John, when you say get together and do some talking, or I should say discussions, or maybe whatever else you have in mind, would you be talking in the way of having party leaders get together with you, as well as maybe the state auditor, currently Matt Dunlap, about it?
Well, I'm not talking about the state auditor. I'm talking about creating an independent panel of experts, government experts, who know how government is supposed to work.
Okay.
And as far as I'm concerned, as far as politics goes, leave the politics to the legislative branch and get the politics out of the executive branch. The governor should be leading. The governor should be running the show the way it should be run. The governor should be putting the people first. And that's what I intend to do. Put the people first and work in the public interest. Put that first and foremost. Put the people first and foremost. So what I want to do is appoint an independent panel of experts to look at our state constitution, all of our laws, all of our rules, all of our programs, and this has taken 200 years to create this mess. It's going to take a long time to dig us out from under it.
Very true. That's true.
We need to have what I call continuous improvement. And that's not happening now. The government, executive branch certainly is not being held accountable, does not want to be held accountable. And that's why I believe we need to have an independent auditing. Now, I'm not talking about financial auditing, I'm talking about program auditing, to look at every program to see if in fact it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Government needs to be held more accountable, absolutely. And I certainly intend to do that. And when asked previously about my top priorities, I think my initial priority is to try and correct this very, what I call, rigged system. Unless we take care of this system and get it democratic, we're never going to solve our problems. They're going to continue, and they're going to continue to get worse. And unfortunately, the government is the source of a lot of our problems, certainly not the solution. So we need to turn that around, and that's what I intend to do.
Do you think that also has happened, John, in this past administration? Like you said, it's been a long time to get something like this done, don't get me wrong. But also the fact of out-of-state influence. Don't you think that has a lot to do with it as well?
I think as you know, I tried to challenge Governor Mills in 2022.
Yes.
In large part because I believe in democracy, and I believe that the voters should not be told who they can vote for. The voters should be able to decide who they want to vote for, and the voters shouldn't have to choose between the lesser of two evils. And unfortunately, that's been happening election after election. As far as outside influence goes, I think this particular governor is too politically motivated, too politically driven. I think she puts politics and big money and special interests before the people. And I think a good example of that is the sovereignty, Native American sovereignty issue. I certainly disagree with her on that. I support tribal sovereignty in Maine wholeheartedly. And one of the reasons she gave for opposing it was because it would upset the forest products industry, because the tribes would be able to purchase additional land and take that land potentially out of circulation for cutting trees. And personally, it's just wrong. It's putting politics before people. And in terms of out-of-state influence, there's no doubt about that. And I mean, there's always going to be out-of-state influence. But what's going to matter is how the governor responds to it. And I can assure you that I would respond to it far differently than this governor is. We need to put people first. We need to put Maine people first.
Do you have any ideas currently, John, just spur of the moment, as far as what type of changes you're thinking about, as far as what you'd like to propose, as far as the Constitution of the state?
I honestly don't know the Constitution well enough. I'll cite one example for you, and that has to do with firearms. And while I believe in the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and certainly, I believe in the Constitution, I support the Constitution. I think the Maine Constitution has gone too far when it says the right to own firearms will never be questioned. Well, potentially that precludes any type of gun safety initiatives here in Maine. If somebody were to challenge those in court and say, well, the state constitution precludes any, even questioning gun ownership issues, I think that is not, our Constitution is not in line with the federal Constitution. So that gives you one specific example. I certainly believe in the right to have firearms, but I think that in some cases things have just gone too far, and we need to enact common sense legislation to save lives. Once again, we need to put people first, and I would definitely put people's lives before guns. That's one specific example.
Okay, a couple last questions here, John. How do
how do low-income citizens get tax breaks instead of taxing the wealthy, as you've mentioned?
How do they get tax breaks? Well, lower property taxes, certainly lower income taxes, maybe decrease income taxes entirely. Um,
How would those be proposed, though?
what's that?
How would those be proposed, though, for lower property taxes for the low income?
Um, property taxes are now paid to the towns.
Right.
Certainly some kind of potentially a state subsidy. That's a possibility. I'm far less concerned about increasing revenue than I am about increasing the government's effectiveness and efficiency. And I'm far less concerned about increasing revenue than I am about changing our priorities. We need to help people who need the help. A good example: we should not be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to help the private sector put windmills on the Maine coast when our own people can't even have a place to live. So many of our people have food insecurity. So many of our people have mental illness that's not being addressed.
And also, John, what about solar panels? That's a concern.
I support it, but it needs to be cited properly.
Okay.
I don't think they should be, out where they're an eyesore. I think properly cited, for example, parking lots, rooftops, other places, similar places. I think solar is a great way to go, but I don't think we should destroy Maine to put out solar panels and frankly windmills too. There are other options for windmills. There's new technology out there for windmills. There's new technology out for hydro generation that the state isn't looking at, state isn't considering, and I think we need to get on the ball and look at new technologies. And as far as helping the poor folks, I was on food stamps for several years, and I know what it's like to be poor.
Yeah.
And I was very, very lucky. I was very fortunate. I had a college education. As far as my master's degree, the people of Maine paid for my master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pay anything, and I want to put that to use. I want to pay back what the taxpayers gave to me in terms of an education.
So what do you say, John? I don't mean to interrupt, but what do you do? What do you mean by in your bio on your website? You support a progressive tax reform. Not real. I don't know if you can capsule it, but
yeah, progressive means that those who can pay more should pay more. Those who can't, who have trouble paying or can't pay at all, should pay little or none.
So that's the tax. Are you talking about adjusting the tax brackets for the state, or the codes, or
whatever it takes?
Okay.
I'm not a tax expert. I just I understand the principle.
Okay.
And I think that this country is going to have a really hard time because the gap between the wealthy and the poor is getting wider and wider and wider, and eventually, that's how revolutions happen. So
that's true.
We want to make sure that everybody pays their fair share, okay. And it's important that we work together and that the government put the people first. That's really the bottom line.
All right, this is my last one, John. I promise. I appreciate your time today. Talking to John Glowa, Senior, ladies and gentlemen, here, Mark Marilon Firm, to get a little bit behind the scenes of what he wants to do as running as an independent for governor in 2026. This is a broad subject, John, and I'm just going to take your words from your website. You said the government has no business telling anyone what they can or cannot do with their reproductive system. Very touchy subject, I know, but how do you expound on that?
I don't.
Okay.
That's it in a nutshell. Male or female, young or old, government has no business.
Okay, so you believe in biological men and women?
I believe that we are who we are. And the government has no business telling us who we are. And the government has no business butting in. We are who we are.
What about the media and social media on that subject? Very touchy.
I stand by my statement.
Okay.
The government has no business getting into our personal business in that regard.
That's a segment of our interview with John Glowa. And we hope you'll take something from that, ladies and gentlemen. And in the meantime, we are going to move on to our next candidate, who did an interview recently on GHRT, WVOM, the Voice of Maine Radio in Bangor. But before we do, we asked Mr. Glowa for a statement of his to leave us with and leave you, the ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those of you who are over the age of 18, of course, 21, to get an idea as he summarizes what his candidate he feels after this brief interview is all about. We'll just take a moment of that, ladies and gentlemen. Here now is Mr. Glowa, one last time.
All right, and one last statement from you, John.
Sure.
What would you leave with our listeners and viewers, when it comes to podcasts, of course, but as a final statement on this particular interview, and what would you give as a statement at this time?
What I would say is that I'm trying to appeal to everybody in Maine who believes in democracy, who believes that our government should be doing what's right, should be working for the people. And clearly, there were a lot of folks who supported Donald Trump because they thought that he was going to change things. And he's changed things, but in my opinion, he's changed things for the worse. I believe totally and completely that we need widespread government reform in the state of Maine. Not the way Donald Trump has done it, but we need to do it with a process that's open, totally transparent, and involves the people. The people know through their own experiences what government has done for them and to them. And we need to listen to those folks, and we need to take their thoughts and opinions into account when the government works to begin to turn things around and do government reform. So, as I said earlier, it's taken us 200 years to get into this mess. The mess is not going to be cleaned up overnight, but I do believe it needs to be a very, very, very high priority. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to sink deeper and deeper into the swamp.
Very good. Thank you, John. John Glowa, ladies and gentlemen, Senior, Independent for Governor in 2026. Thank you for your time, John, and all the best in the upcoming months.
Thank you very much, Mark. Much appreciated.
Now coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned, we are going to present the brief segment of about a 30-minute interview, 25 perhaps, on WVOM Radio, GHRT, George Hill Rick Tyler Show, recent morning, as they interviewed Republican candidate for Governor Bobby Charles. And here's just a few moments of that time frame, about a little over 10 minutes, as what he had to say about the questions and circumstances most Maine people are going to be facing in the next 4 years. Here now is part of that interview.
I'll call it political chatter about some comments that perhaps you made raised concerns about what State Representative Deka Delac has done or said, and then some pushback from even Secretary of State Shenna Bellows. What's going on?
Guys, it's so You're now considered rich. There are now two new brackets on you, and they raised corporate income taxes again. They raised taxes on paint, on fishing, on drugs, on prescription drugs, on hunting, on energy. And you've got a collapsing healthcare system. All of this stuff is the reality that Mainers, everyday Mainers, have to deal with. And so what do they come back with? They come back and attack me and 10,000 probably more than that, but at least 1,000 petition signers who said, you know what, it is dishonest, disrespectful, and needs to be apologized for when we have a Democrat member of the legislature who not only violated her naturalization oath, but also her oath to Maine people by saying that Somalia comes before America. Oh, by the way, and being the original co-sponsor of a bill that every single Democrat signed that intentionally hides illegal aliens from federal law enforcement trying to enforce federal law. So here's the other thing they did. They didn't do their homework on me, okay? You want to come after me and call me a racist because I'm speaking truth? How about these very basic facts that you didn't research? And by the way, Mr. Collins didn't research them either when he suggested I'm part of, the KKK crowd. Let me tell you what I'm about. In the earliest parts of my life, I was a mentor in Black Harlem. I brought two kids to Eagle Scout rank because they had in that 40 by 40 block north of 113th Street in New York, where they had no hope at all. I went in there week after week after week as a unit commissioner in the Boy Scouts to train young black men to become Boy Scouts. India, I went into India and I lived with the untouchables and brought their cases to the United States Supreme Court. I brought to the Indian Supreme Court with the help of former U.S. Supreme Court litigator Jack Greenberg. I was endorsed, when I was unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate, I was endorsed by the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Officers, NOBLE. Go look it up. I spent 10 years in the military working for and with black Americans, and in my family, I have every single color. So here's the bottom line. These Democrats are desperate to distract for their own disloyalty to Mainers. And a second part of that, or a part of that that's significant, is that disloyalty goes to protecting illegals. I am calling them out. And these Democrats, to be frank, honestly, Rick and George, they're imploding. They didn't do their homework on me, and the onion is about to be peeled back on them. They want to use that old play. Remember the play they used on Trump? They want cancellation by defamation. We're going to gag you by accusing you of anything we can. Bottom line is Mainers are sick of it. They've seen this over and over again. They're tired of being attacked for asking for accountability. And I'm just going to tell you, this jig is up. In 2026, I think you're going to see what you saw in 1994 in the United States Congress. A flip of 52 seats happened that year, gobsmacked the Democrats. They could not figure out what the hell had happened. Here's what's happening in Maine. People don't want your damn distractions. They don't want to be accused, because they speak the truth, of being anything, stupid, racist, anything else. They're done with it. They're saying to the Democrat leadership, and of course the Democrat leadership is spitting back right now because they're terrified. When you pull back the legitimacy you pull back the curtain on what they've done, and you find it's illegitimate, and they are directly responsible for all these drug deaths, directly responsible for all these taxes, directly responsible for unaffordable housing, they're directly responsible for energy costs. All of a sudden, they got nowhere to hide. You put bright light in the corners and the cockroaches run, and that's what they're doing right now.
You faced some backlash, and I put that in quotes, when you ran some posts on social media and some campaign video that brought out some criticism of this representative from South Portland, Deka Daklich, I guess is her name. She was a Somali immigrant, but that was 30 years ago. If this is true, did you take her on for being disloyal, and calling her a radical Somalia First lawmaker? Was that the quote that they were after you on?
To be honest, this is a woman who has indicted herself. Okay, she is on not only one, but two or three. In fact, DHS took note of her last month. She is on public record saying that Somalia is her country, not America. I want you to go back and look at the naturalization oath. Do you know that naturalization oath says that you not only swear loyalty, that number one is the United States of America, but that you will actually take up arms against your country of origin if needed. Okay, bottom line is the Democrats have circled the wagon around someone that is not serving Maine interests, but has been pushing again and again for Somali interests in the Maine legislature. And beyond that, has just sponsored a bill to intentionally create a sanctuary state out of Maine, intentionally block the sharing, penalize state, local, and state police in Maine who share information on the presence of illegal aliens and those who've committed crimes like felons here in the state of Maine. They are blocked from sharing information. That was her bill, okay? So now, instead of saying, you know, you're right, we need to reaffirm our commitment to Maine taxpayers, and you're right, I obviously believe in my naturalization oath, which is what a thousand Mainers asked of her a week ago. She just backs into a corner and says, cover me. And so what is happening? The Bellows crowd, the Democrat crowd, the Mills crowd are covering for her. They're basically saying, you know what, we're all in for this idea of sanctuary state. We're all in for this idea that no one needs to integrate or assimilate. We're all in for the idea that you can come to the United States of America. Imagine if someone from Venezuela or Guatemala or China or the Soviet Union said, my country is the Soviet Union. Do you think that would have lasted for a second? No. So the bottom line is speak truth to power. And what power is going to do in this state, because it's a one-party state, they control all the constitutional officers, they control the House, the Senate, and the governorship. This governor, if we aren't clued into it yet, doesn't give a damn about the average Mainer. She has her agenda. She has 10 little hills she wants to die on. One of them is sanctuary state, and one of them is boys and girls sports. These Democrats are so far away from the average Mainer that I'm going to tell you, independents, that's why you just had another independent join the race saying the state's a failed state. You have independents and traditional Democrats who are contributing to me and who are saying, Bobby, go. Speak truth. No one has dared to speak truth. Everybody thinks they're going to be fired or shut down. I run my own company. You're going to shut it down? I have a good relationship with myself. I'm not going to fire myself, okay? They are trying to intimidate average Mainers, George. And you know what? I grew up in this state. I've had it. They hijacked the state. I want the state back. And most of Maine wants Norman Rockwell's Maine back. A state that is honest and decent and accountable and truthful and has integrity in their House members and in their Senate members and loves Maine and loves America, period.
That's the short of it, folks, in our program here about Maine governor candidates. Voters choose to back basics. Well, there's both points of view right there. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us here on FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media, with me, myself, Mark Merrill. As always, please, day or night, before work, after work, weekends, check into our podcasts on YouTube, Twitter, X, and send us a line, any kind of a message, to fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights behind us, as well as our Savior, the creator of this universe, not just this country. Stay safe, everyone out there. Everyone, always keep in mind our flag and our freedoms are precious. For truth, facts, reality, and common sense, Mark Merrill here. Stay safe and peace as always.